The problem is that it's a natural phenomena and it's free. All you have to do is go outdoors, take your shoes off, take a chair, sit down, put your bare feet on the earth. In 15 minutes, it will change your blood viscosity, your circulation will improve, and all of a sudden, you're just a different person.
Meet Clint Ober, a pioneer who spent over 20 years transforming lives through the power of earthing. From innovating in cable TV to revolutionizing health, Clint's journey is one of resilience and discovery.
Where do you find that grounding ranks in terms of importance to other lifestyle interventions for improving health specifically?
Grounding to me is the most important because I have seen miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle.
Chronic inflammation is behind an estimated, get ready, 70 to 80% of modern diseases.
The real problem here is it's inconvenient. We have been sold shoes for 60-some years. Barefoot always felt better. You had more energy, you could run farther, and you could do whatever.
So how much grounding is enough? 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, 40 minutes a day, an hour a day, sleeping grounded? What is your ultimate recommendation? Clint Ober. This is going to be very exciting for me today because it's one of my very favorite topics of all in the health optimization space. Where do you find that grounding ranks in terms of importance to other lifestyle interventions for improving health specifically? And how much priority should we give to it?
Well, I can tell you, I'm 80 years old and I can still walk 4 or 5 miles. I can move. I have energy. And most of the people my age, I know, I mean, they're not 1 in 100 can even come close to doing what I do. But if you want to have the energy to move and your body to function, you have to get grounding is number one because it's like sunlight. If you block out the sun, you're going to have a real problem. And that's one of the problems we have today anyway. We have to take vitamin D because we're not outdoors enough. Grounding to me is the most important because I have seen miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle. I have seen tumors go into remission in days just by putting an electrode patch on the area. And so all it's doing is reducing the inflammation so the immune system can go to work and clean up the problem. Like the riders in the Tour de France, they recovered 70% faster when they were grounded versus when they weren't grounded. And so on. It goes on and on. But grounding is you're not yourself because your immune system is stressed. Your body is stressed. Your body's in a state of stress. If you are not grounded, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what it's because we came from the earth. We were always grounded. Our immune system depended on us always being grounded so that the grounding could reduce the radicals that otherwise interfere with the immune response and the immune system. So it's like breathing. You have to have it. You can go without it and your body will compromise. It'll dissolve calcium to free up enough electrons to maintain blood pH. Your bones might get very brittle and you'll end up with osteoporosis or whatever. But this is all related. Everything is systemic to looking at nature and putting ourselves back in our most natural state. It's get more sunshine, get grounded, get some fresh air, and move. Exercise is there's only one thing that's equal to or better than grounding. That's exercise.
Now, when I first heard of grounding, this is a really interesting point, is that it was actually with my friend Matt Maruca, who I'm sure you know Matt from Raw Optics. He was standing in the sea in Santa Monica with his arms out in the morning, seeing sunrise, and he was like, oh, you can feel the free electrons. And I was just like, this guy is out there. Like, he is out. And anyway, and he said, dude, just look into it. And that's when I started researching into your work. And I didn't talk about it on my Instagram or online or anything for a very long time, just because I thought it was very woo. But in fact, it's not. There's over, I think it's 27 studies out now talking about the positive effects of grounding. And I hear people constantly saying grounding does nothing. It's not scientific. What do you see? What do you say to people when they say it's rubbish and you're a tree hugger?
Well, first of all, I didn't take it at first thought either. Because if this were true, somebody should have told me about it. Somebody should have known. Somebody should have told me. And that's the number one thing I hear from guys all the time. Well, if this were true, somebody would have told me. I would know about this, And but to put it in perspective, 99% of our customers around the world are female. And that's fair because women take care of health and all that kind of stuff. But the guys are all, well, this isn't, this can't be. This can't possibly. But I spent over $20 million as the company. And we produced all of these studies because, again, at that time, back in the late 90s, nobody even knew their body was electrical. And so I was kind of dumbfounded because everything in the body is electrical. Obviously, your heart, your nervous system, and so on. So I was just kind of backed away from the people and said, "You guys go believe whatever you want," But I went on and proceeded producing the studies. The latest study that we are about to publish has to do with mitochondria and production of ATP. Grounding improves the output of ATP. The reason it does is not because it affects ATP directly, is because it reduces inflammation in the body, and that affects the production of mitochondria. So it's a chain reaction. So this is about an environment. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, so back in the late 90s, everything was, nobody knew. Everybody thought it was, well, we don't have enough we don't eat enough blueberries. We don't do this. We don't do that. That's the cause of all of these chronic health disorders, because debilitating degenerative diseases started in the 1960s, and they've been growing exponentially ever since. And it was 1960 when we invented the synthetic sole shoes that we lost our ground. Mm-hmm. And before that, we moved indoors from the 1950s to the 60s because of television. We spent more and more time in the serial programs and everything. So all of a sudden, we were no longer naturally grounded.
Well, the funny thing is whenever I give a talk anywhere around the world, and one of my fundamentals is ground well, I always say, who here has been barefoot in the garden in the last week? And probably get 3 or 4 hands. And I said, how about in the last month? And you probably get 20 or 30 hands. And we're talking 500 to 1,000 people in each crowd. Yep. And it's like, and then obviously, the health optimizers or biohackers or whoever in the room, because you get a massive show of hands in certain conferences. And it's absolutely insane how, if we'd done this, let's say 100 years ago, 99% of people would say, yes, me. So tell us a bit about the science of grounding then, Clint, because, I know some of the anecdotal things, and I've read obviously some of the studies. And, one of the things that really interested me, that really put me over the edge of this, was looking at the red blood cells clumped together before grounding and then after, and how the red blood cells were equidistant after grounding. So do you want to just, let the guys listening, a little understanding on the science?
The Earth is charged with free electrons. It comes from the sun, photons, protons, electrons, and so on. But anyhow, the Earth maintains a negative surface charge. The word negative means an abundance of free electrons that can move rapidly and reduce charge. You can't see it, but it's a reservoir of free electrons that's residing on the surface of the Earth, and it encompasses the entire globe. So when you are standing barefoot on the body, or on the Earth, your body is conductive. So it will absorb and equalize with whatever in the environment is larger than itself. Like, for instance, the Earth is infinitely large. When you touch it, then your body is going to, at the speed of light, you will become grounded. So you stand barefoot on the Earth, and all of a sudden your body absorbs these electrons. Well, the reason these free radicals, or these reactive oxygen species, the reason they exist past the oxidative burst is because we used to be grounded. The body used to always maintain an abundant supply of free electrons, and those free electrons at the speed of light would reduce these radicals. And so they didn't manifest as inflammation or as what we call inflammation today.
I mean, it's super interesting to hear you say that. So what I've taken from that is basically the Earth is negatively charged, and our body, the more we're disconnected from it, means that we become more positively charged. And because, I guess, a bit like osmosis, but not related to fluids, when a smaller body connects to the Earth, a bigger body, the flow of free electrons come into our body, which then obviously scavenges the free radicals, reduces inflammation, promotes healing, and lets the body work electrically. Now, one of the things that, as you're saying this, I'm just thinking, you're right. It's like medicine doesn't really pay attention to electricity except for dehydration, get the electrolytes in quickly, or if your heart stops. Right. And it's almost like the medical, the pharmaceutical world is like, let's use what we have to and let's ignore. And this is why I think the rise of electric medicine or electromedicine, such as bioresonance or some of these things, I think actually have strong merit. In fact, just to the point about how our bodies are so electric is actually I went for a bioresonance scan of sorts in Germany about a year ago. And they did a full scan of me and they did my partner as well. And when it came back, it had a whole list of stuff. I didn't pay attention to the list of stuff. They gave me a device to help reset my body electrically. Anyway, fast forward 6 months, I went to an ENT to have my tonsils checked, and they swabbed me and they said, oh, you've got diphtheria on your tonsil. It's not the bad type, don't worry. And then I looked at the bioresonance scan and it picked it up on me, but not on my partner. And so 6 months before I'd had the diphtheria, the bioresonance machine picked it up, and also another thing that I had been working on. So it really is like, it just seems at this point in time, with all the technologies and everything that we have around us, like these phones, these laptops, how we're talking to each other on different sides of the planet, and yet we can't get our head around something that we evolved with and that we are electrical creatures. Doesn't that seem crazy?
Well, yeah, it took me, 20 years, 27 years. I'm still working on it, researching here, researching there, and putting together, this body, like I call it, body of evidence. But it's about money from here. I mean, somebody has to be able to make money off it in order for it to get into the mainstream.
Yeah, I mean, obviously money drives innovation, and also money means that you can pay for studies and things like this. So I completely get that. So just out of interest, like, obviously we've touched on the immune system and how that helps, how grounding helps with our immune system and energy production. What do you think, other than that, are the major health benefits of grounding?
The first study we ever did is we measured cortisol, 24-hour profile on cortisol. Every 4 hours we would do a swab and then we sent them to the lab, and then we had a profile of the cortisol secretion profile. 6 weeks, 2 months later, we went back and did that again. So anyhow, cortisol is your stress hormone, your fight or flight. So what I learned about sleep is the number one thing, if you're not sleeping, is because your cortisol is elevated. It's about something you're thinking about. So what grounding does is it quiets, it calms. The first thing that happens when you're grounded, you release this environmental charge, this atmospheric charge. And that charge contains, it's large. It's not just EMF or something like that. It's everything. But anyhow, you're short of electrons, and that changes the electrical polarity of the body. So everything is, all of a sudden you go from a grounded state where these electrons are saturate the body and they're readily available to prevent charge. So if you go back and start looking at health issues, diabetes and all that started in the early 50s. And then we go on to, the fibromyalgia, lupus, the MS, the cardiovascular disease, the cancers, they all started to grow exponentially from 1960 on for the last 65 years. So, and this was why the work was so exciting and so, for me anyway, is that, wow, everything I discovered led to something else. So first of all, I thought, this improves cardiovascular disease. It improves circulation, or it does this, or it's good, if you have asthma and all these things. I mean, the last one we're doing right now, like I mentioned earlier, is on mitochondria and ATP. ATP significantly increases when you get grounded. And so it's not about the grounding itself. It's about we change the environment. We don't have, these are not physical disorders in the sense that we describe them. They're environmental health disorders. And the electrical stability of the grounded body in nature has been compromised.
It's actually really interesting because I just did a search while we're talking, and I said, what percentage of disease is caused by inflammation? And it came back with chronic inflammation is behind an estimated, get ready, 70 to 80% of modern diseases.
Right.
Heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, arthritis, digestive disorders, and even depression have all been linked to inflammation. The missing piece, people that are listening today.
Yes. Here's the challenge. The problem is that it's a natural phenomena and it's free. All you have to do is go outdoors, take your shoes off, take a chair, sit down, put your bare feet on the earth. In 15 minutes, it will change your blood viscosity, the thickness of your blood. Your circulation will improve. You'll feel the charge. You'll feel lighter, and your respiration, your O2 saturation will naturally come up. And all of a sudden, you're just a different person. And you know how the body is. It adapts to almost any situation in seconds or minutes, and you forget.
Yeah.
You forget pain. You can't remember pain, all this. But the real problem here is it's inconvenient. We have been sold shoes for 60 some years, 65 years. We've been sold synthetic tennis shoes. And everybody wears them today. Now they're a fashion item, no longer because when we were kids, barefoot always felt better. You had more energy, you could run farther, and you could do whatever.
So Clint, one thing that astounds me is actually the chronic sickness rate in pets and dogs. And just looking up while we're talking that 86.1% of dogs are in the vets once a year at least. And I looked into this a little bit further. It's like, how likely is it going to be inflammatory? And what it came back with is there's compelling argument that dogs, like humans, benefit from grounding, and the prevalence of health issues in dogs might indeed be partly due to a lack of natural grounding. Dogs that mostly live indoors, spend limited time on natural surfaces, may experience similar consequences to humans who lack grounding, chronic inflammation, stress, and possibly weakened immune responses. So, you know, pet health, I hear it so frequently. And in fact, I know someone that moved from the country to the city, and then their dog started having epileptic seizures and unfortunately passed away. So it's amazing how it's not just us humans, it's dogs as well.
No, it's all living
creatures.
things.
Yeah.
Pets die from the same health disorders that humans do. And these health disorders do not exist in nature. 50% of the people will die from cardiovascular disease or cancer. Same population in animals. 50% of all animals will die from cancer, if not more. And that cancer does not exist in the natural world. So this is all lifestyle. These are environmental. We have an environmental health challenge on the table here. It's not about everything. You know, everything's the way it's always been. And we developed within that and depended on those resources in order to live.
So what you're saying is wake up, get your dog, go out in the garden and work out there for the day. Yeah, I walk my dog every day. Joe McCullough says that he walks on the beach and takes his calls on the beach every day, grounded. I've heard him say a few times. So how much grounding is enough? 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, 40 minutes a day, an hour a day, sleeping grounded? Like what is your ultimate recommendation?
Any amount of grounding is good because you're discharging the blood, and the blood will thin, and it'll start reducing some inflammation. Even if it's only 30 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever, that's going to have a significant benefit. Now, depending on what you do throughout the day, if you have pain start to come up, then that's a message. It's time to get regrounded. For the people, younger people who have they have resources. 27 and below, you can do anything. 27 and above, it's all downhill. And what I try to suggest is most of our people their health is compromised, so significantly. And so these people need to be grounded, on the average, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, 16 hours a day if they have MS or lupus or some of those things. But more is better. But in nature, you would be grounded 24/7. You couldn't have inflammation in your body. The animals who live outdoors in nature, that sleep on the earth, walk on the earth, eat fresh vegetable, or, grass, whatever. There's no such thing as inflammation. It does not manifest. You have to compromise the immune system.
How do you recommend people to start grounding or adding it into their daily routine? Like, what typically do people find works best for them?
The first thing I always tell everybody, you have to do your own research. You have to do your own tests. So that means you have to get a chair. You have to go outdoors. If all you have is concrete, it's the same as earth because it's made of earth and it's got rebar in it and so on. So it is grounding. An electrician will not wear a leather shoe on concrete. Mm-hmm. So the best thing to do is do your own experiment. Go outdoors. Take a half hour if you can. Notice all the pain and stress or anything that's in your body. Doesn't matter what it is. Write it down. Then sit there for 10, 15, 30 minutes and then just notice. And I always tell them, go look in the mirror before you go outdoors. And then sit there for 30 minutes and it will drain all of the charge out of your body. Mm. And the body will return to normal. Mm. And the blood circulates once a minute. So within 15 to 30 minutes, you're going to look 10 years younger. Your color is going to come up. Your demeanor is going to change. That anger, that from that tension, it depletes, and you just become happier. You just become, you're connected to everything on the planet that is connected, electrically connected to the earth. All trees, plants, animals, and so on.
It's really, really interesting point because you just made me remember there was a cortisol test done, wasn't there? And I think it was probably your work, but where they tested cortisol before grounding, and for instance, there were people with high, and it brought the cortisol back to base level. For instance, if you're super stressed, having a panic attack, whatever it may be, your cortisol's flying high, you're just about to lose your shit. You go grounding, and then it changes. It's the same. I notice it with. Actually, for myself, when I'm on holiday, if I haven't slept well and I jump in the sea, in fact, within a minute, not only am I hydrating, I'm also grounding, hyper grounding, I call it. And and all of a sudden, you're like, anyone that's listening to this, I challenge you when you're, let's say, hungover, if drinking's your thing, or tired, and you're on holiday and you jump in the sea. Stay in there for 5 minutes. Tell me it didn't change your life. And I think this is really a evidence-based thing for an N=1 for people out there. The other interesting thing was on the cortisol is that, like, when people actually had super low cortisol, i.e., there wasn't enough when they woke or whatever, they go out in the garden, then they remeasure cortisol and it brings it up to baseline. So it's like almost like an adaptogenic herb set just from standing in the garden. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, health is natural. It's a birthright. You're born with health, and it takes many years to screw it up. And it's lifestyle and environment that has the major influence. But the immune system in the body, it only knows to do one thing: is if you remove the stresses of life, then it returns the body to normal. And I don't care if that's arthritic fingers. I don't care what it is. The body is a self-healing mechanism. It knows what it's doing.
Yeah, it's homeostasis is the word, isn't it? It's literally, it will always return back to the natural state, which is operating correctly. Yeah, and we need the electricity for that. So that's fantastic. So obviously, you've been the biggest proponent of grounding, aka earthing, for quite some time, and pretty much everything comes back to you from wherever it's discussed, which is incredible. But I know you have a brand. And I know, and this isn't a plug or anything like that, because you talk about grounding and you don't even necessarily drive people to what you do. But I'd like to hear it from you. Like, what is it, your brand, that you've brought out as a result of all your findings? And for instance, I actually have your grounding bed sheets, which you kindly sent to me years ago. But do you want to tell the listeners what products you have, what they do exactly?
Basically, the products that we have developed, or that earthing.com has, they are the products we use or had to develop in order to do our studies. We had electrode patches, which we still have available in cords. And we had, when we would ground people, we had to ground people in order to do biofeedback or to draw blood or to see what the effects were and so on. But in that process of doing all those studies, the people always wanted to take the mats home with them that were actually grounded. And that went on. And then all of a sudden people would come back and they want one for their mother and whatever. But we were a research and development company. We were not in the business of developing products, but we had to develop the products because, and then everybody wanted them. So one day we sat down and said, okay, what can we do to manufacture something so these people can have something to go home with, or that they can, when they find out about it, learn about it, they can incorporate it into their family or lifestyle and so on. And so we decided, well, the best thing we can do is give them something to sleep on. The first thing was a mat that was 12 inches wide and 24 inches long, and we sold millions of them. And then eventually we went to the bigger bed sheets that are, they're the carbon fiber, or the carbon sheets that are black. You put them on the on top of the mattress, below the mattress cover, above the mattress cover, and then just put a sheet over them or lay directly on them. We came up with that because so many people they didn't want to have to think about anything. They just wanted to be able to come home, go to bed, be grounded, and so on. So all of these products, we only really have three. We have yoga mats, we have sleep mats, we have what we call the uni mats, and we have the patch kits. I think it's only 4 products, but the products are simple. And and the thing I've always tried to say is we need innovation. We don't need people to knock us off or pick up our stuff that we discontinued because it wasn't high enough quality. We need people to come shoulder up and innovate. We have to have grounded flooring, grounded carpeting, grounded everything. Yeah. We have to, if the immune system is compromised because of loss of ground, then we have to restore that. So the business opportunity, not for me, but for the future, is all the people that can add value to their existing products and services.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you very much for telling us about the products. I mean, it's really interesting because I choose to live in London for half of the year. The rest of the year, I'm chasing the sun and on the beach, grounded, working in the garden, whatever. In London, I don't have that luxury of having a garden, but I do have earthing bed sheets with a dirty electricity filter on them because it's London, it's in a high rise. But And I found this to be fantastic for my sleep, to be quite honest. And in fact, it was a night or day different from me. The other thing I just wanted to share is I know that there's some, anecdotal stuff out there about the red blood cells, as I mentioned earlier on. This is personally for me, and I care what works for me ultimately, and that's all I talk about. But I had live blood analysis done about, it was last December. And my red blood cells were all clumped together. Funnily enough, I'd been on a flight from London to Vegas, which is 10 hours. And I was seriously inflamed and my red blood cells were awful. So actually I went outside and I grounded and I got on the patch of ground that I could and went back in and got retested. 40 minutes later, because I did half an hour of grounding, 10 minutes to get in and out, red blood cells equidistant. And it's just insane so it shows how I think flying, bringing us so far away from the Earth's field, increases inflammation even more, which is why we get sick when we fly, I think. But that's speculation.
Yeah, that's partly true. But even a woman who goes to work in the office, she's sitting on carpet, fluorescent lights raining down, and your blood's going to get thick after you've been ungrounded for maybe an hour or so.
So thank you, Clint. It's been a wonderful journey today, and thank you very much for coming on the show. Obviously we're going to put all of the links and everything in so people can find where to find you and where to get grounding bed sheets and things from. Is there anything that you've got in the pipeline or anything you're working on that we want to know about and have the first ears on it?
I do have a new product that we're going to bring out maybe next year. The whole concept is very simple. You need a portable earthing device, and it's not really earthing. You're not connecting to the earth. What it is you need a portable reservoir of free electrons. And I designed it more for the women because that's our real outlet too. But, 1 in 10 women die from breast cancer. And I have personal experience with that. And so that's important to me. And then our kids with ADD, ADHD, autism. Autism is an inflammation-related health disorder. I mean, it's in the literature. Go to Johns Hopkins, anywhere. So it's inflammation that causes the cytokine storm or whatever that starts the fire that burns, the brain, and then you wake up and here's what you got, But you can reverse that if you get on it quick enough and they're young enough. And but anyhow, and the world's not going to just adopt anything I come up with overnight. But if you're going to give somebody a shot, you need to give them you need to give them a negative charge so they can reduce any of the radicals. Because when you're inoculating these children, when I was a kid, it was mumps, rubella, and whatever, but they were all 30 days or more apart. Today, they're giving them 30 shots at the same time. So the immune system that's creating a lot of inflammation, and the immune system is trying to respond and adapt to those viruses, and they do, but in the process, there's heat, there's a fire, and that fire does damage. You need to put out the fire, and the only way you can put out the fire is you have to ground out that inflammation.
Clint, it's been an absolute pleasure to record with you again. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Same here.
Yeah, and looking forward to crossing paths very soon.
As soon as these are available, I'll ship you some and let you play with them.
Thank you. A massive thank you to my guest, Clint Ober. Learn more about Clint at earthing.com. You've been listening to the Health Optimization Podcast, and I'm Tim Gray. Comment and leave the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel to see more.